I ran on height limits in '08.
Okay.
And height limits of relatively strict, like in the South U area, for example.
Yeah.
That's not a position that I would take in the same way right now. And so housing prices in Ann Arbor since the Great Recession, prices have increased 4 times the rate of inflation. Rents 2.5 times the rate of inflation. 1,000 residents live in a single building. That's extreme. That's an extremely different scenario. It's far more efficient from an infrastructure perspective to service people in a denser living environment.
Christopher Taylor, thank you for joining Pursuit's inaugural podcast.
It's my delight to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. You
Awesome.
played a really important role in the initial shaping of Pursuit. So it's fitting that you are guest numero uno.
Perfect.
So I'd love to start with your background. For those that do not know, you are the mayor of Ann Arbor.
It's true.
Guilty. And you're originally from New York, came to Michigan to attend the University of Michigan as a vocal major, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. You're well briefed.
Talk us through the evolution. How did you initiate as a vocal major and then end up deciding to run for council and then ultimately mayor?
Yeah. So I've, I born in New York City, spent time there. My family is New Yorkers. We spent a little bit of time in Illinois. Went to a high school up in northern Michigan at the Interlochen Arts Academy. Yeah. I've always been interested in voice and theater and things like that. And so Interlochen was
podcast guest, by the way.
Oh, excellent. Interlochen's the best place. And so, the road from Interlochen to University of Michigan is pretty straight. And so came here to the School of Music to get a vocal performance degree. Ended up getting that degree, but along the way developed realized that my interest was I liked singing, but I also liked reading. And so I got an English degree. In addition to the vocal performance degree, eventually realized that neither one of those is going to be the thing. So what else am I going to do? I'm going to go into American history because that's even better.
Logical next step.
Absolutely. So I got into the PhD program in American history, developed an interest in American legal history.
Okay, so undergrad Michigan, you went to get a PhD in American history?
Yes.
At Michigan?
At Michigan.
Okay.
Since you said the words PhD, I do not have a PhD. So I was in American legal history. After I passed prelims, I decided to go to law school in order to make my legal history dissertation better. Got to law school, was like, oh, this is a much better fit. Boom.
Yeah.
And so, all at the University of Michigan. Eventually, we were in Boston for a couple of years, came back to Michigan in '02, and kind of living my life, doing my thing. Always been interested in government.
And you were a lawyer at this point?
I am and was.
Okay.
Never pictured myself participating in government. I've always thought that it was a potential of a force for good, people working together, common purpose and so forth. Yeah. But, my parents are lovely, but they're not joiners. It just wasn't my vibe. Eventually I had brunch at a friend's house one day. And my friend, we got to talking about politics, more state, national. I didn't even really follow local at this time. And he said, you should run for city council. This is in March of '08. And I thought, that's crazy. And I told him why, and he told me that my reasons were stupid. And then he said, I think you'd be great. I could help you figure it all out. And if you want to do it, you need to shimmy and shake because the filing deadline's in April. And so
you had a month?
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
So I talked with him, others, obviously family, and then pulled the trigger, filed, and then, 4 months later, I'd won the primary, and then there it was. That was in '08, served on council for 6 years. Mayor Heath just stepped down, decided not to run again in 14, and then, there was a primary, and it worked out.
What was it, if you rewind time to when your friend said that you should run for council, what was it that you think triggered them to say that?
Oh, interesting. I think ex ante, he, thought I was a, smart enough, reasonable person. I think he was interested in local politics in a way that I, hadn't been engaged. I think he saw both an electoral opportunity, he, didn't like being represented by Jones and wanted to be represented by Smith, and thought, oh, this could work out. Christopher is, personable enough, smart enough, works hard enough, would be good on the doors, so I think he saw electoral opportunity and then, of course, values alignment.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So then you ran for council, you were on council for 6 years. And for those that may not know, can you educate us? Because Ann Arbor is like a council manager setup.
Exactly.
AKA a weak mayor. You're a very strong man.
Council manager, I prefer, but go on.
But educate us a little bit on that. Like, what are some of the things that a mayor does in a council manager setup that they don't do in kind of a, the scenario of the New York mayor, for instance?
Yeah. So Ann Arbor is a little bit of a slightly different animal for council manager. In many council manager forms of government, the mayor will actually be elected by the council. In our context, the mayor is elected by the people as a whole, throughout the entire city. But nevertheless, the power structure is generally the same. In a council manager form of government, the mayor is the chair of the board. The council is the board of directors. The mayor and the council hire in our context, the city administrator, the chief executive of the city.
Yeah.
And so the mayor in a council manager form of government has, doesn't have operational control, doesn't have, in many instances, operational visibility, but does have sort of policy direction, foreign minister duties, and of course, coalition directionality.
Yeah.
In addition to all the kind of backstage conversations, the chief executive often talks to the chair of the board to kind of figure out what the board wants, because the board doesn't meet every single day, every single moment. Right. What is the direction of the stakeholders? And so the mayor has to have have an understanding of that and be able to communicate that effectively to the CEO, who then distributes that throughout the organization.
Got it. So the in our case and in other council manager cases, city council and the mayor will select the city manager. The city manager hires and manages all the people, all the departments within the city, the budget, the actual execution of all the day-to-day work. That's the city manager or the city administrator.
Absolutely.
What does the mayor do in that scenario different from a city council member?
The mayor is, I think, closer to staff and has a little bit extra soft power. Like a council member will rarely be interpreted to sort of speak for the body on directionality within parameters.
Yeah.
The mayor will be presumed to be able to speak about council's vibe with respect to that directionality within parameters. If council passes a policy, nothing the mayor says or does is going to get the administrator in a proper world to deviate from that policy. Right. But the policy, all policies, like they are directional. They often don't have the sort of operational precision that's necessary to implement. Yeah. And so the administrator will say, well, what's council looking for here? We're thinking of implementing this solution. Does this vibe with what council wanted 3 meetings ago? Right. And I'll say yay, nay.
Okay, got it. So you're kind of more hands-on directionally with interpreting policy and
consulting.
Helping. Yeah, sure. How do cities or municipalities decide whether it's a council manager system or a strong mayor setup?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I mean,
it's usually
it happened
cities.
It happens in the distant past. There was a charter commission in the 50s, 1950s, and that's what they decided.
Okay.
Council manager tends to be present in cities of our size, smaller, not the big cities that you identified, like New York, Chicago, so forth. Those are executives. Yeah. Mayor Detroit hires, fires. Mayor in Chicago hires, fires. In a city of our size, anybody can get elected. Yeah. Who's to say that the mayor has any understanding of HR, any understanding of fire services, police services, and so forth? Mm-hmm. The city is a complex operation. Yeah. And it's small enough to really need a CEO who really knows what they're doing. Yeah. In a larger city, there's perhaps more bureaucratic institutional momentum and experience and embedded knowledge in a way that's present here in the city, but capable of frustration if the CEO were an elected official who didn't have that operational expertise.
Got it. And I obviously understand you're not the CFO or the finance director, but could you just give us an overview of like the budget and where does how does the city spend money if you think about it, like whatever dimensions you think matter? But for instance, people versus non-people costs, or by department, how do you think about like where the budget goes and how it gets allocated?
Well, the budget, per your observation, is a staff generated document. The city council sort of accepts the budget and then tweaks it along the way, and provides directionality for next budget. The city's budget presently is about $650 million. The general fund is about 150 plus or minus. The rest is distributed in our various utilities and pension funds and so forth.
Yeah. And the sources of revenue, like for the city, could you just high level, like what are the major ones?
Primarily, it's property taxes. We do get state revenue sharing, and that's utilized. We do get revenue from our various utilities, so stormwater, water, sewer. For example, those are ratepayer functions rather than taxpayer functions. Yep. But those are the general points of entry.
Got it. Okay, and then as we segue into kind of some of the more specific topics around, for instance, one we wanted to cover was housing and land use.
Sure.
But I guess what I'd be curious to understand is how are city priorities actually created? Focusing on land use versus other issues that may be going on, public safety, what have you. To what extent? How does that come together? How do the priorities manifest?
I think what we council members will. Well, I think the city council is generally the point of conversation. Like that's the point of prioritization. Obviously, you have the what has been done in the city in the past,
sure.
what institutional portions of the municipal organization have funding and programs that are underway or envisioned, but that can shift as council members come and go. Council members often come with a particular focus in mind. Some focus on transportation, some focus on policing, for example, some focus on housing,
climate,
et cetera. And so the ability of those council members to work within the organization, work within their work with their colleagues, work with the commissions to which they are appointed. Those will sort of set the top of mind priorities, in addition to all the exigencies of what's going on in the city every day, in ways that come down to us from federal or state, or bubble up from residents.
So on a given year-to-year basis, you have council members. Obviously, there's all the work that the administration has been doing, but as new council members are elected, you're saying those priorities that they ran on, that the people wanted them to focus on, that they were elected to focus on, make their way into what the priorities are. Is that part of an annual planning process? Like, where do those things? How does it come from? Ward member or Ward 3 person got elected and had this priority, and then now that makes its way into like a plan, which then makes its way into the budget. Like, what's the kind of the flow of ideas there?
The council itself does not come together and sort of workflow create. So there's not that kind of planning doesn't happen as a group. So, for example, we have some council members who have focused on transportation, non-motorized transportation, with some measure of primacy on Vision Zero, protecting pedestrians from crashes. And so, they come. This is their sort of driving focus. They will, seek to be appointed to the Transportation Commission. Unless there's not room at the inn, or for some whatever reason, like I as mayor will want to feed council members what interests them. And so we'll put them on the planning commission. Put them on the transportation commission. Once on the transportation commission, that's a place where policy gets reviewed, generated, and so that will be the source of policy then that comes from council member to planning commission. Planning commission's on the mind. It's been that kind of week.
We'll get there.
Thank you. I'll get there. To the transportation commission, rolls through staff, of course, because staff is crucial in this endeavor, and then ultimately up to city council.
I see. So folks get elected to council. They then get appointed to various commissions based on interests or capabilities, what have you. Then within those various commissions, they produce plans, and then that makes its way into like kind of the workflow of the city. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Is there anything that I missed about that?
I wouldn't. Plans less so. Plans are a little bit more. Those will come from professional staff as like, now's the time for to re-up our non-motorized transportation plan.
Maybe ideas.
Yes, policies, directionalities, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, got it. So focusing on housing and land use, there's a lot happening in Ann Arbor right now. You've said that there's a structural issue in Ann Arbor where demand is outpacing supply. And my perception, tell me if you think this is fair, is that as you've been in office since what, 2014?
Mayor 14, Council 08.
Since becoming mayor, my perception is that you've become more pro-development over time, which is a hot topic in Ann Arbor.
It is.
It's a growing city. Do you think that's fair, that you've become more pro-development over the years?
I think so. I mean, I would date my transition a little back to 08.
Okay.
Like I ran on height limits in 08.
Okay.
And height limits of relatively strict, like in the South U area, for example.
Yeah.
That's not a position that I would take in the same way right now. And
fascinating.
So yeah. I mean, facts change, opinions ought to change.
Yeah. Well,
conclusions ought to change.
Yeah.
And so, I think there has been a transition in how I've approached what the city needs based upon what I and others have observed.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack that a bit if you could. Like, what did you learn that changed your mind?
Yeah, I learned a couple of things. First, the supply and demand is real. There is increasing demand for housing. University has increased the number of students, 10,000 over the past 10 years or so. Yeah. Housing prices in Ann Arbor since the Great Recession, prices have increased 4 times the rate of inflation, rents 2.5 times the rate of inflation. Yeah. This has real and tangible challenges and creates real and tangible problems. Economic segregation, because of America. Yeah. Economic segregation leads to racial segregation. Yeah. And that's not the direction we want our city to take.
Right.
Further,
by the way, on that point of segregation, I would
Yeah.
imagine the majority of people in Ann Arbor would agree with you on that. Do you think that's true?
I think that's true.
In principle?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that kind of city.
Yeah.
Further, so those are some of the housing challenges that I've seen over time. Further, I had even at 41, running for council, a little bit of a nostalgic view of old Ann Arbor. I came here in '85. This was 08. Yeah. This was 08. The city as was a thing that was near and dear to me,
you
and
appreciate it,
I had concern over what new buildings would do to that image of a city, that feel of a city. Yeah. Over the course of time, I came to the conclusion that the proliferation of high rises downtown.
Yeah.
It's change, and Christopher doesn't always love change, but Christopher can adapt to change. Yeah. And some of that change is good, some of that change is less good, and that's life. Yeah. Successful cities evolve, they grow. Right. And I came to have a greater comfort for that. The risk of it all seems to be less realized to me than the gain of it all.
Yeah. So the math behind that, first of all, I applaud you and I appreciate you for
Tell me more, darling.
Using math to drive your opinions and decisions. That's like, it seems obvious, but in today's world, maybe not so obvious.
Sure.
So I really respect and appreciate the pragmatism that you bring to that, and
thanks a lot.
Using math.
Yeah.
Right? So we talked about kind of the supply side issues where housing costs are going up. From the city's budget perspective, I think there's also, you shared a bit about this when you and I have talked before, where revenue wasn't necessarily growing at the same rate as costs. And that's not, as I've heard you say, that's not the motive behind development. The motive behind development, I think, correct me if this is not fair, is to increase housing supply and make housing more available and accessible. But when you look at the city's finances, revenue doesn't grow at the same rate as costs. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the way that taxes work in Michigan is that the state rules, Constitution, there is a limitation on the way that cities can raise revenue, and that's done with intentionality. And there's lots of reasons why I think that's disadvantageous, wrong. Poor policy, whatever. It is the way it is. So
just to be specific, you're saying the state law caps how much cities, or how much and what types of revenue? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So, for example, we don't have control over sales tax. Yeah. We don't have control over restaurant tax. Mm-hmm. We are not able to tax tickets for sporting events in excess of 100,00 attendees.
Oh, that's interesting.
By way of example, as by way of a hypothetical. And so we internalize all those costs.
Yeah.
can only have an income tax under certain limited circumstances. We get a property, and the way that the state constitution limits property taxes can only go up at the property taxes for existing structures, non-transferred structures, can only go up at the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
And so over the course of time, inflation is whatever it is, but that inflation rate is, in some respects related to, but is extremely different from municipal costs.
Yeah. Municipal
costs are very much personnel, very much construction, repair, facilities.
Yeah.
Those costs are different than the CPI.
Yeah.
And so, we have revenue challenges in this regard. If we did not permit development, we would be having extreme budget challenges.
Yeah.
Our finances would be, far worse than they are. We would be in a service-cutting environment.
Yeah.
And so
that's not a fun thing for people to experience and vote for.
People do not care for that.
Yeah.
And nor should they.
Yeah.
And so the authorization of building has enabled the city to grow its tax base in a way that has enabled us to have an extremely healthy financial picture.
So let's talk about the cost side of that and the revenue side
and
of that.
since you asked, our bond rating is AAA.
Well,
the administrator would kill me if I didn't mention it.
Yes, respect for all that hard work.
Carry on.
On the cost side,
Yeah.
Basically, I think what you just said is that government costs rise at a rate that is greater than kind of broader CPI.
Yes.
Right? What do you unpack that? Why do you have any hypotheses of why that is?
I mean, it's because our costs are different. Like we're not buying, because
TVs as much. Right?
Yeah, we don't buy those. We buy cement.
Yeah.
We buy healthcare, for our workers.
Yeah.
We buy wages.
Yeah.
We buy,
pipes,
buildings,
metal,
pipes. I mean, all sorts of things. Like
right.
we buy
stuff.
things that are outside of the consumer context, and they cost more.
Yeah. Do you think is it different from say a big company like an auto company that's building plants? Do you feel like I don't know, maybe this is an unfair question, but do you feel like that you have any? Does the city have a higher rate of inflation than say like an auto company building a plant? Do you have any idea?
Good question. No idea.
Not sure. Okay.
No.
On the revenue side, so talked about how state has some caps on the types of revenue and how much revenue you can generate. Why is it though that building, and this is maybe a layup for you, but
Sure.
why is it that building a taller building and increasing density doesn't proportionally increase the costs of the city? I mean, you've mentioned, for instance, like you don't have to pave more roads,
right?
Roughly the same amount of pipe, but you get leverage out of density. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's extremely fair. It costs, 1,000 residents live in a single family neighborhood. That's a great deal of pipe. It costs a lot to service those residents. 1,000 residents live in a single building. That's extreme. That's an extremely different scenario. It's far more efficient from an infrastructure perspective to service people in a denser living environment.
Yeah.
Further, and this is something that is infrequently appreciated. When there's new development, we do not pay for the infrastructure that the developer needs in order to service their building.
Right.
The developer pays for that infrastructure. If there's infrastructure expansion that's required because some sanitary pipe down the way is insufficiently wide, that's going to be a developer cost.
Yeah.
The developer also doesn't just come in, throw the switch and say, thanks so much for this awesome water treatment plant that you created back in the 30s.
Right.
Like, thank you for doing that. We'll now come in, free on it.
Yeah.
No, they tap in, they pay for, a capital recovery cost.
Yeah.
Like, it's for real.
Yeah.
And it's, in some respects, it's a barrier to development. But, on the other hand, like,
the infrastructure has to get funded.
They can't come in and freeload.
Right.
They have to pay for the system that they're enjoying.
Yeah.
And people don't quite realize that.
How when you talk to peers and that our mayors in other parts of the country, how much of that experience that you just described, where, and especially outside of the state of Michigan, maybe like where the state laws are different, how much do other mayors deal with this challenge where revenue doesn't grow at the same rate as costs?
I think that's a universal condition.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere. Biggest cities down to smaller ones.
Yeah, I mean the growth, tax base expansion, like these are things that are crucial and needed for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, I guess like where I'd love to go next is to talk about kind of jobs and population growth. So, I think, is it true in Ann Arbor jobs are growing faster than the population than the supply of housing? And also, we'll get to the U of M point in a minute because obviously they have a lot of land use as well. But population growth is kind of capped by supply of housing. So how do you think about that? Like, is your view that jobs are growing at a faster rate in Ann Arbor than housing supply?
Growth is an interesting question. The existence. So I'll not fight the hypothetical, but I'll pivot a little bit on growth because I don't have a growth figure in mind. But it's plain and obvious we have more jobs in Ann Arbor than people.
Yeah.
We have 80,000. Sorry, 80,000 people come in and out and commute the city every day.
Yeah.
Come in, go out. We've got more jobs than we have people in the city, and so that's some kind of disbalance. And this gets to another sort of I think unappreciated beneficial of more dense development, particularly in the downtown. We want to be able to provide people that work in Arbor ought to be able to live in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Not everybody who works in Arbor wants to live in Arbor. If you want to, live on an acre, whatever, somewhere, bless you.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks would want to live in Ann Arbor, and if they are able to live, on Packard Stadium, Plymouth, in the downtown, they're not taking a car in and out there. Much more likely to come in, on the buses or walk to their place of employment, and that reduces congestion and really helps everyone. I think it's an unappreciated benefit to the resident who's not going to move into a high rise for the existence of the high rise.
Yeah. Interesting. So your view is that having more density actually reduces congestion on the roads. Is that true?
Reduces commuter congestion. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So I guess on the topics of jobs and housing supply, where do you hope Ann Arbor is in a decade?
I don't really have a target.
Yeah. Maybe it's just not a specific number, but do you view? Well, maybe a way to ask the question differently is my view is that city council is very pro development now.
Yes.
Do you view that? If some number changes, that you guys would back off of that, or is it do you view that being pro development for the next decade is probably the path?
I think we're not in the business of building market rate housing.
Yeah,
we're in the business of authorizing market rate housing, and so in some respects that's a market question.
Yeah.
And outside of our ken, we are not It's not a command economy. We're not saying, this must be done, that must be done. The market will tell us when at some point there'll be a building built, and it will be a problem for the developer.
In what way? They're not able to fill it.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to fill it, or something's going to happen that's going to signal, we're kind of getting there.
Yeah.
And we're kind of getting there. I don't know where that point is.
Yeah.
But
we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Cool. Public safety. This is a topic, obviously, police, fire, those are big departments in the city. Right? Just scale of employees or budget. How much does public safety, if you think about police, fire, how much does that account for of the city budget roughly?
Yeah, I think like I said, the total budget is $650, plus or minus. The police is about 30, 35, fire 15, 20.
Okay. So
we've got about 23 sworn police officers, about 75 firefighters out of a workforce of 850.
Okay, so about a quarter by workforce in total.
Yeah.
So what's the philosophical view for the priorities? I think this is kind of something in the work that we've done with cities. We see folks investing in data. We see folks investing in technology, drones, license plate recognition. Talk to us a little bit about the environment and the philosophical view around public safety in Ann Arbor. I mean, it's a pretty safe community.
Yes, it is.
And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But what are the priorities that the police chief's talking about?
Yeah, so I think the police chief, and I'm super excited about our chief, Chief Anderson. Community policing is really where he's coming from, and he's getting that direction from his heart and also from council's approval.
Yeah.
We want police officers to be known to residents, to know residents. We want them to be there and to do their job professionally and swiftly when called upon.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Absolutely.
And they're just people trying to come to work and do the best.
Yeah.
And so I think the philosophy is that we want everybody to understand that the police department is there for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's work that we have to do every day.
Yeah.
It's work that we have to do sometimes against the flow of public discourse. But we do our best.
Can you elaborate on that last point? Against the flow of public discourse?
Sure. In democratic circles, the place of policing has there's some contest around it.
Absolutely.
That's as a instrument of governmental power that that hesitation is earned.
Yeah.
Government has it's not just police, and I think police often are focused on as sort of the point of governmental discrimination, of racial oppression.
Yeah.
I think it's important to observe and to maintain and to be clear about that structural racism has been part of government for years, state, local, federal, and so we are not. This is not a police problem. This is a societal government problem.
Yeah.
I think that it's important for us to recognize that, but it's also important for us to recognize that we as a city, as a movement, are working to counterbalance that.
Yeah.
The people who come to work every day, in our police department, they are there to do the right thing. They're there to help people in need. Nothing makes them prouder than being able to provide someone assistance in the worst day of their lives.
Yeah.
They're there to help. They're also the instrument of accountability because we do have crime. We do have people who are doing violent things to each other, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And so I'm real grateful for the work that the chief does, the work that our officers do.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to the extent you have a view on it. Like, I think there are other places in the country, other cities in the country, bigger cities where, if you walk into a Walgreens or something, that things are locked down, And one thing that is kind of like a foundational observation of pursuit is that the rules that were well intended to do whatever that thing is, like, save taxpayers money in the case of procurement rules, or in the case of, like, in Detroit, there's some issues right now around renter about property owners being able to evict renters. Those are well-intended things, I think. And I think smart, hardworking, well-intended people put those in place. I do think sometimes, though, and I'm curious your view on this, the rules actually end up working against us. And so, for instance, in other cities, if there's a cap or a kind of a rule that prevents evictions, that flows down into the landowner or the property owner economics, and they actually can't keep the building afloat. Financially, they lose the building. No one else wants to come in. Building goes under, and now that's like that housing supply goes away. So that takes housing supply off the market. I'm just curious, how do you think about that? Like, when you're trying to come up and make rules or policies or shape them, how do you kind of calculate the opportunity cost, or maybe not even opportunity cost, but like the unintended consequences?
We have. I think this hits a lot for us in building. A lot of us in the planning department. We have for years been had a city policy. Not a specific, here it is on 224 policy, but like a direction that has been development-skeptic, and so it has been our requirement that every single thing needs to be buttoned up at the very beginning before you go to the next step, and there can't be any sort of parallel work done in order to get to the end. It has to be sequential, and we have to be suspicious and rigorous about what's being presented to us.
Sorry, and just so I'm clear, like, is there like
building plans, site plans, engineering plans, and so forth?
So like no one developer, for instance, gets a leg up.
It's less about that on the procurement side, and more about that on the when you've submitted something. Like everything needs to be buttoned up before it goes to the next stage. So we need to understand exactly how you're going to take care of the. I'm going to make something up now, and it might be sequentially wrong, but we didn't know exactly how you're going to take care of the stormwater before we start talking about the sanitary.
Sure.
And we're not going to send your site plan to Planning Commission, even for the first conversation, if we don't know exactly what you're doing with respect to natural features.
Sure.
Even if it's the sort of thing that you you as the petitioner, you need to take care of this before your final go.
Yeah.
But we are not going to let you get started even on the last stage of the conversation before the mid stage is completed.
Sure.
That creates it has some effect on the final product, but it also increases cost in the system because of time and so forth.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's developer cost, and who cares about development costs? But I think that's I don't think that's a mature way of thinking about things.
Right.
Like, it's not our job to make developers money, but it's also, I think, important for us to know that we put cost into the system, and that cost comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
someone pays for it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the people who pay for it are the residents of that structure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's the incentive that is at work there? Because one of the things that I've observed, I think a lot of times people who work in government get an unfair bad rap of, throw out whatever allegation, lazy, whatever. And in my experience, that's not been the case. It's, there's a phenomenal Charlie Munger quote, "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome." And so what one of the things we endeavor to do on this podcast is actually to understand the incentives that are at work, right? Because, that dynamic that you just described exists for a reason. And I think rather than just like railing at, it's expensive to do development, and not understanding the underlying incentives there, is like, if you actually want to solve problems, you need to understand the incentives. Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, what are the incentives at work there where you're saying do things sequentially? What's the driving force behind that? I
think in part it's defensive. We are to demonstrate that we are not improperly trusting the petitioner.
Okay. Petitioner in this case being the developer.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that we are not, relying upon their say so. We're seeing it in the stamped plan. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the incentives.
And that is the incentive there is what exactly? Is it that
it's protect from criticism, to protect from the accusation that we are here and interested in developer profit rather than resident benefit.
Got it.
By way of example.
And that would show up for an elected in the next election. If it's perceived that council's doing a bad job on that dimension, they run the risk.
Yes.
Of not
now I think that's deeper in the system.
Yeah.
So that those are often we as council are not creating that structure. We're ratifying that structure.
Yeah.
I think the folks who ultimately devised that workflow did so mindful of the fact that was something that council cared about.
Yeah. That was something council cared about.
That council didn't want to have that. At some point, as I tracked who's the agency of creating the thing, I didn't know that council created the thing, but council created the incentive on the staff to create the thing.
Got it.
Is my point.
Understood. So I wanted to just pivot to, obviously, Ann Arbor has a phenomenal academic institution embedded in it. As you talked about that academic institution.
Are you talking about community high school?
I was talking about the relationship with Michigan State, actually. No, but no, the public schools are phenomenal as well.
Absolutely, go on.
3 kids in them. With University of Michigan, and the University of Michigan is growing. There's developments right now by the train tracks to put in 2 large new student housing areas, and so. Talk a little bit about how, and I don't know what I don't know here, but how does the city plan alongside of or coexist with the University of Michigan?
Yeah. So the University of Michigan, and the relationship with the city of Ann Arbor in the city of Ann Arbor has a couple of features. I mean, everybody feels like they're unique, but I'll say they're noteworthy. There is no campus. Like there is no university over there.
Right.
A little bit on North Campus, but for the most part, it is infused throughout the city.
Yeah.
Second, and that's tactical in the local geo. Strategically, University of Michigan, like some other state institutions, but relatively unique among national across the national perspective. The University of Michigan is created by the state constitution. They're created by the state constitution. That means that constitutionally they are on par with the legislature. The city of Ann Arbor is created.
Legislature of Michigan?
That's correct. Oh. The city of Ann Arbor is created by the legislature. And so there's a non-frivolous argument that the university doesn't have to follow state law because they're created by the state constitution. They're on par with the legislature. Why do they have to follow state law? To my knowledge, that's never been pushed, but it's non-frivolous.
Okay.
What is certainly true is that the University of Michigan does not have to follow any local law.
Got it.
Any local law. Zoning code, sign ordinance, anything. University of Michigan, as you may know, has a fair bit of tin in the bank. Yeah. They have all the money in the world. They have all the right in the world. Further, they have the right of eminent domain. They can't exercise that on city, to my understanding, although I could be wrong about that, but certainly with respect to private property, they can take any private property they want with adequate compensation for their purposes. And so within the boundaries.
Sorry, just to understand that is they can purchase things on the market, is what you just said, or is it different from that?
It is different from that. So, for example, you mentioned the various developments for new housing. Bless them. Yeah. We need more housing. I'm so glad they're doing this. You can imagine a world in which some of those property owners were excited to sell their property. Yeah. You can also imagine a world in which some property owners, if they had their full authority, would have said, "No, I'm never going to do that."
Right.
However, at the back of that conversation, when the university comes and says, "I'd like to buy your land," there is always the possibility that they will exercise their right of eminent domain, which means just like the city can take your land for city purposes with adequate compensation, the university has that right too. So they can buy on the open market with whatever money they have, and that's a lot. Yeah. But they can also seize your land with adequate compensation.
I didn't appreciate that part. Thank you for clarifying.
And so what is the relationship like with the University of Michigan? They are a behemoth among us with all the money in the world that don't have to follow any of our rules. They don't pay taxes.
Yeah. That's an important point. They don't pay property taxes.
They don't pay property taxes. And so, what kind of relationship is that?
Yeah.
You can imagine where that could be, have a lot of problems. And I'm not going to say that we never have any sort of like, I kind of wish you had done that. I kind of wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah.
But crucially, the University of Michigan understands that it is in their existential interest to have an amazing city. Yeah. Like if they, do what they do in a way that messes up Ann Arbor, that is going to be an extremely
that hurts them.
Extremely bad for their long-term success. Yeah. And so, if you had to have such a behemoth amongst you, you couldn't ask for a better one than the University of Michigan.
Yeah. And the hospital system, is that a sub of the university, or is that a separate entity?
That's university.
So they plan same rules apply to the hospital system.
Absolutely.
As well. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So for example, like some universities would pay their city pilots payments in lieu of taxes. University does not pay a pilot. Now they work with us on some projects that are proximate to university structures and so forth, but there is no sort of general gift to the general fund, for example, as many universities and large institutions would in this context. The reason for that. I'm going to pretend university. I'm going to pretend Princeton. Princeton wants to build a library. They want to build an 8-story library and a place that's zoned for 4 stories. They can't do that. They go to the city council and say, "Would you please rezone our land?" And the university city council says, "I don't know about that." And Princeton then says, "Actually, we were thinking about a $10 million pilot." To help you out because we want to be good neighbors. Yeah. And the city council then says, 8 stories seems just about right.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Not Ann Arbor.
How common, how common is that, given that U of M was created by state law?
Constitution, crucially different.
Constitution, sorry, thank you. You look at University of Texas, you look at Colorado, Wisconsin, how common is that among other state institutions? Do you have any idea?
I believe we're like one or two states that other states have some kind of structure as that, but it is rare.
Okay, interesting. One of the other things I wanted to explore was just kind of the relationship. So we talked about the relationship with University of Michigan. Talk a little bit about, and it might be there's not much to report there, and that's totally fine. But like, let's step through some other, what I would think of as like affiliated public entities. So Ann Arbor Public Schools, separate entity, like legally from the city of Ann Arbor. Is there any relationship there? Is there any coordination involved?
I mean, we will coordinate upon, some coordination. I mean, they've got their own land, they've got their own money, they've got their own board staff. They do what they do.
Yeah.
Their aspirations generally do not knock against city policies or plans.
Yeah.
So they don't want to build a 10-story building in a 3-story area.
Yeah.
So we don't have that sort of conflict. We need to roads, traffic, that tends to be how that plays out. Mm-hmm. Some infrastructure questions. We work together when and as we need to, but it's not grand coordination. We've got our lanes and we tend to stick to them.
So on just a couple areas I'm specifically curious about there. So like, for instance, public safety.
Yes.
In schools.
Mm-hmm.
Some schools have their own police departments with actually sworn officers. How does Ann Arbor Police interact with the schools? Do they? My understanding is that they're, I think my kids, the fire department comes and they, spray water on them and stuff at the end of the school year. But like, does Ann Arbor Police, are they the main, do they have jurisdiction, I guess, over public schools? The school does not have a separate police department. Mm-hmm. The university, for example, has a separate police department. Right. With its own sworn officers.
That's correct. Yeah. I think they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 officers.
Okay.
Schools does not have that. So for criminal matters within the schools, that's AAPD.
Got it. Okay. And then if in theory, and I know there's not a ton of, with the Ann Arbor school bond, there's new schools being developed, but mostly on existing land. How would that work if the Ann Arbor Public Schools wanted to, acquire land to build a new school? There's no eminent domain there.
That's a good question. I suspect they would have it because they're government, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, interesting. Cool. And then let's talk for just a second about relationships and interaction with the county. Mm-hmm. There's, I think, health departments run out of the county.
That's correct.
There's obviously the sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
There's other county matters. How much interaction is there, whether it's from a coordination or planning perspective with the county? And what are some of the things you lean on the county for versus not?
Yeah, from a planning perspective, like building, land use, not so much.
Yeah.
Like we've got our own jurisdiction.
Yeah.
They have, they're a property owner, mm-hmm. But from a planning perspective, no.
They're the property owner for instance, on Main Street with the county.
Yeah, they've got their own buildings. They've got some land here and there, County Farm Park, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Yeah. So the Viridian and Grove, that used to be county land. County land distributed it to developer and to Avalon Housing. We had to zone that.
Got it.
And so that was some measure of coordination.
Okay.
You mentioned public health. There's not much coordination. We do what they say. Yeah. Public health. Yeah. The community mental health services, homeless services, direct human services, those are county functions. And I think those get a little bit closer to where we as a municipal organization rely upon them and engage with them. The county runs the Delonis Center downtown, the main homeless shelter. And so we need to work with them to, they're both Delonis residents and downtown residents, and so we work with them on those sorts of issues. Yeah,
and when you say we, I'm just curious. Like tactically speaking, is that like people within a department of the city would interact with people who are employees at the county level, or is there from an elected perspective? I'd imagine, is there a coordination there as well? There's
some conversation with council members and the county commissioners, but more typically it would be within the organizations.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk for a second about the state. What are the main interactions that the city would have with the state?
Well, I guess first and foremost, the question of revenue sharing. Mm-hmm. This gets back to the inability of the city to have its own sales tax, for example. Mm-hmm. Part of that grand bargain. No, not a grand bargain. Part of that that implemented that top down result was that the city would receive money from the state for that comes from sales taxes.
Yeah.
That comes in two tranches. It comes in constitutional revenue sharing and statutory revenue sharing.
Okay.
Constitutional revenue sharing is established by the state constitution.
If you want to change that, really hard to change.
Really hard to change.
Yeah.
And crucially, the state legislature is subject to the Constitution, and so will do what the state constitution says.
Okay.
We get the constitutional revenue sharing. The statutory revenue sharing from this promised tranche of the sales tax is subject to the exigencies and whims of the state legislature. And so you're sitting down, so I feel confident. It's okay to say we don't always get what we were promised when it comes to statutory revenue sharing, because when the state gets money, they're like, we have needs and we don't want to raise, because we live in, whatever political environment we live in, raising taxes on people who can afford it isn't something we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so we're going to squeeze the people downstream.
Yeah.
We're the people downstream.
I see. And how much advance warning do you have of that?
Well, the state budget came out on October 3rd. The state budget starting October 1st came out October 3rd.
So you literally find out about it. I mean, I'm sure you have some.
There's
some murmurs of it before.
There's murmurs, but it depends. Like this cycle obviously was
more
the way it was more contentious. When we have a trifecta, one way or the other, we tend to have a little bit more visibility.
Got it. Trifecta meaning legislature, governor.
Yeah, legislature, governor, all of the same party. They would tend to work together to a greater degree than they would currently when one house or the other.
So that is the upcoming. I don't know what the calendar schedule is for the state of Michigan, but that's for the upcoming budget year.
That's correct. The current budget year.
So, like
October to October.
October to October. How much? Okay, so how much are we talking about there? Like, would be shorted?
Oh, I mean, over time. You see that the problem is like, what is your base? You're asking shorted over baseline. I mean, it's millions over baseline, but the baseline has never been achieved. So
right. Plan versus actual thing. Okay.
Promise versus actual thing.
Yeah. How does the city respond to that? Like, let's say
Thank you.
What?
Thank you. I mean, what are we going to do?
You figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But this is the point of like, if you're tight on budget, like, and the state funding gets cut, then you cut services.
Yeah. Or go into general fund balance if the sliver is enough.
Right. And you think that maybe
if we can cover it this year, and I mean we tend to focus a lot within our budget about recurring expenses and one-time expenses.
Sure.
As one would, and so we'll typically have $1, $2, maybe $3 million on the $150 million general fund of one-time expenses. So if we're light on revenue sharing and we aren't able to build it up, make that up over the course of the year because of more conservative predictions on property taxes, for example, then
push that thing out.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And what are the big like one-time expense buckets?
There would be things like a $650,000 study to determine the best way to design Nixon Road.
Okay.
An example.
Got it. Okay. Understood. And then the state, obviously, you're a mayor. You're not the governor. But like the state, obviously, they're receiving money from the federal government.
Yes.
That, I would imagine, is under pressure.
Yes.
And this is kind of the rolling downhill thing that you talked about
earlier.
So it's what I'm curious to understand is like do you view that as a direct result of what's happening at the federal level, or maybe not?
We haven't quite gotten there yet, although we're on the way. It hits us. We've lost a couple of grants, as you might suspect.
Sure.
And so that does hit us, and we're unable to do the things that we wished in that regard. We've maintained some grants, and so that's all been to the good. Housing is probably the point where that's going to have the most effect on us. The budget coming out of Washington, money coming out of Washington to the state will reduce the number of housing vouchers and the like that the state
coming from HUD.
Correct.
Okay.
That we are going to be able to offer to residents, and so that's going to be the primary point of pain in the city.
Which means that those vouchers went into like direct rent support.
Correct.
Okay. And you can see that has like
direct effect on people's lives, not getting the help they need.
Yeah. So just to be plain about it, people becoming unhoused,
or moving in ways that are undesirable for them.
Right. Yeah, kind of back to the supply thing. Okay. I wanted to thank you for all that. I wanted to come back to kind of wrap it up and hit you with a couple of quick questions. One thing, and maybe this is like, I think of companies as equations.
Okay.
How much money you make is like, there is an equation that drives that, and you can change what the equation is. But like, if you're Apple, how many iPhones you make and what the price is, at a very simplistic level. Yeah. I'm curious, like, do you feel like that is like in the public sector? There are inputs that produce outputs. Obviously, the output of a public sector agency is not profit.
Right.
It's a bunch of different things, housing and quality of life, and it's like
butterflies and parks, the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems really, really hard to try to like get to a place where people are happy, and that's like kind of the beauty of our system with people being elected, and it changes all the time. But like, does that analogy resonate with you? Like, do you feel like that applies on some level for a city, or if not, like, what's the mental model you have for how you make decisions? It's fine to say no.
Yeah, pardon me. No, I think I'm going to. It's less for me. It's less precise than that. And while I don't imagine that companies have all the agency in the world, I think they probably have more agency with a more cleaner goal than does a municipality.
Right.
If I'm not a big analogy metaphor person, but but a river.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff coming. There's momentum.
Yeah.
Where should the river go?
Yeah.
Are we happy with where the river is? Do we want to change the course? How do we do that? It's I don't know how wide the river is. This can extend to places that it stops being useful.
Yeah.
But I think it's we are trying to understand our general direction and trying to channel that in ways that we think are going to be better for the team. And by the team, I mean everyone.
Yeah, the people. Yeah. Okay, so just real quick, like things that you believe, Christopher, in what year is it, 2025?
I think so.
Versus 2008.
Yeah.
What do you now believe that you didn't back in the day, as it relates to being a mayor?
Yeah. I think that, Ann Arbor, first off, being mayor of Ann Arbor, we've got our troubles, but I wouldn't trade them for anybody's.
Sure.
So I think the community that we have here is more resilient than I had feared back in 2008. I think we are able to experience inputs, if you will, and take them in and create change and have that change be okay. I've been gratified by the ability and enthusiasm for residents to step up and address problems that aren't immediately theirs.
Yeah.
We have a lot of support in the city for affordable housing.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to need capital A affordable housing. And by support, I mean money. Like, the city passed a millage, voters accepted a millage, 70-30.
Yeah.
Climate change is real, but at the same time, we're not going to fix it here.
Yeah.
But we're going to be part of the solution. City of Ann Arbor voted to tax itself in a real and meaningful way in 2022. Also 70-30. The city
70-30 vote, 74-30 against.
That is correct. Yeah. We're committed to working hard to create a community that is that tries to work for everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I had that in my mind as a thing that does exemplify us back when.
Okay. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I was more apprehensive.
Great attribute. Okay, cool. Is there any particular decision that if you had a mulligan, you would do over?
I mentioned height limits back when, and and seizing them and viewing height limits as a tool to accomplish some kind of neighborhood character, some kind of community character.
Yeah.
And I don't view them in the downtown. Crucially, in the downtown, in that same way. Mm-hmm. I think we need to have, honor scale, certainly, in established neighborhoods, honor streetscape in established neighborhoods and so forth. And I think that the comprehensive land use plan that we're putting together is certainly going to do that and envision that for subsequent zoning. Yeah. But within the downtown, I was apprehensive about building in the downtown back when, and I'm far less so now. I think we can take it, and it's good for people who live there. It's good for people who don't live there.
Yeah, that was what I was going to clarify. So it's the reason why you changed your mind on that. If I summarize, and tell me if this is not fair. 1, additional housing supply for people. 2, it helps the city budget as a byproduct.
It helps the city budget, yes, of course, but also I think it helps improve residents' lives who are not. Money, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And all too often we are shamed at the city for being interested in tax base increase as a matter of political culture, and that frustrates me. But whatever. Yeah. When more people live downtown, it's good for people who don't live downtown. It improves, I think, their traffic experience.
Yeah.
It improves the vibrancy of the downtown in a way that I think benefits everyone.
Yeah. Cool. Is there a risk that you think the city should take but hasn't yet?
I think we're in the process of thinking that through. Like the comprehensive land use plan does envision a city that really is committed to housing growth.
Yeah.
And we'll see whether that gets the broad-based support over time that I think it ought. I think the plan does envision a city that is more affordable, more equitable, more sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think it does so. It looks in a way that that retains the awesomeness that we have.
Yeah.
Doesn't do violence to established neighborhoods. Puts additional density materially where it can be born.
Yeah.
Doesn't increase infrastructure costs and so forth. Doesn't do violence to parks.
Yeah. Its values align.
I think it does, and but that is that's going to be an opportunity for change and risk, and we'll see what people have to say.
Yeah, and as a practical matter, walk us through how that plan would get adopted, actually. So there's a comment period, I think council voted.
We just started yesterday, yeah.
So walk us through that. So
it's been going on. So the plan has been developed over the course of 2 years now. We started in October 23.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's in draft 3. Draft 3 is now going out to the public for the state mandated 63-day period. At some point, that period will end. I think we're extending it a little bit so that we get it into the new year past the holidays.
Okay.
Planning Commission will revise the plan as they conclude.
Mm-hmm.
Council will receive Planning Commission's draft and
approve
it or not,
yeah.
And then it'll be done.
Yeah.
The important thing to note is that the adoption of a comprehensive land use plan does not in of itself affect any legal change. What it does do is it provides directionality for subsequent zoning conversations, which are going to be much more specific, block by block, heights here, setbacks here, unit size there, bed limit there, all those sorts of things that people are, that some people are talking about and sort of want to see, as well they ought, because those are the on-the-ground conditions. But the comprehensive land use plan is not the place for that. That's in zoning, and that's going to take place over the next couple of years.
Got it. So it is a kind of a guiding principle and thesis, and then the specific decisions will be made
right.
down the road. It's not a law or an ordinance. It is
That's
a plan.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Got it. 63 days.
Yeah.
That's an interesting number.
I mean, the wisdom of Lansing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I was going to ask you, this is kind of a tough one, so feel free to take however much time you want. But in 5 words or fewer, what is Ann Arbor's next chapter? You could use 3. Ann Arbor's next. Well, typically, whenever I talk about what we do as local government,
maybe I'll pivot on that because I've got it. And this is something I've talked about. Like, what's the purpose of this thing?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? We're improving basic services, enhancing quality of life. That's what we're supposed to do.
Well,
that's what we're working on.
That's your equation.
Yeah.
Improving basic services, enhancing quality of life.
Yeah.
And there's so much judgment that goes into that. And different people can think differently on that, and that's part of the challenge and the fun of it, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
If there was like a couple of numbers that you think and you hope in 2035 are different for Ann Arbor, what would those be?
Commuters. Like, I'd like there to be fewer commuters, and not because we stripped jobs, but rather because we had people who work here, live here.
Yeah.
Our carbon neutrality. We've got our A20 plan to achieve community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030, which is extremely aggressive. I'd be eager to see how.
So an electric dump truck or
yes,
truck
electric refuse truck. Exactly. We've got about half of our light fleet is electric, a third of our heavy fleet is electric, and it's super cool.
Yeah.
And so I'd be excited to see where we are in
quieter
that
too,
plan.
by the way, like way quieter.
The drivers love it. It's all a really good thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much for the time, Christopher. It's been a pleasure having you.
It's my delight. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Yep. See ya.
All right.